Welcome to the Smithburg Auto Scoreboard Show. We've got Coach Cody Van Fleet with us. Welcome to the program, Coach.
Thanks for having me back on.
All right. Well, we'll start wherever you want to start. Tell us a little bit about, I think you were at the West Burlington Notre Dame game. Sounded like Shea Stevens was doing Shea Stevens stuff.
Yeah, Shea ended up with a pretty solid 33 points last night. Made a couple threes in the second half, but in the first half, his transition offense is really his greatest superpower. We've talked about it on this show multiple times, and everybody I talk to, if you don't have Shea Stevens picked up and moving to the side by the time he gets to half court, he's running downhill. And I say that about every week about the kid, but his ability to score in transition, he is really turning into a complete basketball player here over the last couple months. And he has some threes that just spreads him out, makes you have to go out and try to guard him farther out. But I give West Burlington some credit. On paper, they don't match up as well as I'm sure Coach Marlowe would like against Notre Dame, which nobody in the league does. I mean, they've got a lot of talent. They've got size. They can score inside. They've got shooters, and they hung with them really for the first half, and then made a little run in the third quarter. I think cut it to either 3 or 5, somewhere in there. But at the end of the day, they just ran out of gas. Guys started getting into foul trouble a little bit. And Notre Dame pulled away. Final score was 79-46, but really was a closer game than that for 3 quarters. And fourth quarter, they just kind of, West Burlington ran out of gas. But Aiden Figueroa had a good night. Silas Lotso had a good night. Both those guys are averaging 17 and 10. They each had right around there. They had some guys that stepped up and made some shots, but unfortunately, Ari Jannings, I forgot to mention him. He really shot the ball well in the first half. Hit some big threes, really kept them in the game. But Payne Brotzman hit some big shots last night. Eli Olson, obviously Shea, 6'4" guard that can guard all 5 guys on the floor. It was pretty fun watching him and Figueroa go at it last night, but just way too much firepower, way too much transition speed for Notre Dame. And they really pulled away in the fourth quarter to make the score look a lot more lopsided than it was.
If you're just looking at the score, you're saying, oh, Shea Stevens scored 30, scored 36 points, he scored 41 points or something. But the stats don't tell you the story unless you see him with your eyes. He is a human highlight reel. The dunks that he makes are just so much more electric than almost any player you've ever seen. You just can't take, he's just a force you just can't take your eyes off of.
Yeah, and I had a chance to just kind of sit there last night as a fan, and Joe O'Brien sat next to me, who was the athletic director at SEC, won 3 national championships there, and Hall of Famer, NJCAA Hall of Famer, and it was the first time he had seen Shea this year. And this is a guy that's been a Division I head coach, and had a pretty good career. And he was, I said, "What do you think?" And he was just very, very impressed with, his strength, his ability to guard, his first step, especially his ability to drive. But when he has to pull up, he can do it. But he doesn't force a lot of shots. If he thinks he can drive it to the basket and get a layup, he does it. He had 1 charge drawn on him last night, but if you can drive it 12 times and only have 1 charge, that's 11 baskets. And in a game like this at a high school level with 32-minute games, that's hard to combat.
Well, he seems to have an extra better vision than everybody. He seems to see the whole game, the whole court so well, and seems to be able to anticipate what his teammates are going to do and what the defense is going to do. And certainly a terrific player. Anything else about this game?
No, just really, really impressed with, again, when you watch elite teams, and I had a chance to see it firsthand the last couple years with our team at West Burlington. When you play elite teams like Notre Dame or like our West Burlington teams last few years, or I remember playing against the Soko twins, or coaching against them when they played at Danville. When you're playing great teams like that, you have to, you might be able to play at an elite level for a quarter or a quarter and a half, but somebody gets in foul trouble, if you make a sub or if just things, you miss a couple shots, have a couple turnovers. Now all of a sudden they get up 8 or they get up 10. And then you call a timeout, you try to readjust. Now you're fighting just to stay, within 8 to 10. And then you have another bad stretch for 2-3 minutes in the second half, and now all of a sudden you're down 16 to 20. That's really what happened last night. I really think that West Burlington played well for probably at least 2.5 quarters. It was just, that they had about 12 minutes where last night where they just couldn't, turn the ball over, gave up some layups, didn't get back on defense. And that's 12 minutes of doing stuff like that. Notre Dame's going to go plus 30 on you, and that's exactly what happened last night.
Well, Scotty Melvin was texting up a storm telling me about the Shea kid last night. I told him, I says, he's the Willie Mays of basketball. He agreed with me. I know that was a great. Did you get a chance to talk to Scotty any last night? Or?
I did. I got a chance to talk to Scotty before the game last night. We had a nice 15-minute talk or so there as we were watching West Burlington girls and Notre Dame girls go at it, which shout out to Joe Bowman and the Lady Falcons. A lot of people expected that girls game to be a lot closer. Notre Dame girls, while they've only won one game, they've been pretty close in a lot of games. They've played well against Fort Madison. They've played well against Holy Trinity, Danville. They really haven't been blown out much. Wow. And man, the web girl for West Burlington and Coach Bowman's 1-3-1 was nasty last night. And I mean, they really played well. And the Pearl freshman for West Burlington got super hot in the second half. I think she made 3 or 4 straight threes, and there just wasn't anything that Coach Stevens and the Nikes could do about it. So shout out to them. And so Scotty and I kind of watched the girls game together, and I was contractually obligated to watch the game from the Notre Dame side. But then when the boys game started, I was able to go over and sit with some Falcon friends. And yeah, last night was a conflict of interest for me, 100%. But everybody made it out. Nobody got hurt. And at the end of the night, it was a great showcase of Burlington basketball between two local schools that, have a lot of respect for each other. And it was just a really fun night to showcase what our two schools and our community has to offer.
Well, we're going to hear from Scotty Melvin tonight. He texts me. My deal with Scotty is I pester him to death during the football season. He just gives me whatever he wants the rest of the year. So he's going to come on and share some thoughts last night, but he was sure impressed with what he saw last night. But Shea Stevens is a great player, but I was in the presence of a great player last night as a Meepo came to Holy Trinity, and a young man named Max Griffin scores his 1,000th point. Meepo's terrific. They just seem to have it all. They got depth, they got height, they got shooters, they got guards. They can kind of do everything. They definitely get the win here. It was like 55-39 or some ish score there.
55-37.
55-37. But what do you just tell me to give us a little rundown on Mr. 1,000-point Max Griffin?
He has been a thorn in our side in this league for the last 3 years. He's averaging 19 points a game. He's shooting 37% from the three right now, which means, that's pretty good for a high school kid to shoot 37. I mean, elite college level guys are shooting in the low 40s. So for him to be shooting 37%, that's pretty darn good. He's 19 points a game, and we talked about it yesterday in the pregame show to have those 3 seniors with him and Lutnager and Worrell all averaging double figures, just that they're really starting to show, that they're ready to take on Central Lee for that second spot and maybe, take a shot at Notre Dame, to see if somebody can finally knock them off that that first place pedestal. But he can do it all. He's their leading rebounder. He's their leading scorer. He can do a lot of things, and he's just very calm. He's kind of an ice man. When I see him, you don't see him get too crazy, at least in the games that I've seen him play. He doesn't get really emotional. And he's been a real, just good, solid ball player in this league. But unfortunately, he's been overshadowed by Mason and Shea for the last 2 years. So it's nice to see him get that. I think anytime you score 1,000 points, that shows that you've been a really good ball player. You've probably played at least 4 years. I mean, you almost have to play at least 3 years of varsity ball to get 1,000 points in this era. But yeah, he's had a hell of a run, and kudos to him. And Holy Trinity's struggled, Dave, putting up a lot of points. They just don't. They don't have the depth. I think we talked about this yesterday. They don't have the depth that a lot of these elite teams or top tier teams have, and they're young, but the future is bright. Rhaegar's putting up numbers.
Man, he played terrific last night. He really, I mean, the Jay Ellison is a big weapon for them, and I know he's got a tremendous 3-point shooting average, but he had the flu, so he was very limited in minutes. He didn't really, I don't know if he made any baskets. It's just 2 or 3, but like they just don't have the depth. Coach Worrell's team, though, there's something about them. They're not selfish in any way, shape, or form. As Gatlin Gunn can do it, both them Lutenagers can do it. They move the ball around. Max is a terrific passer. You know what I mean? So much of the time when the defense all flows to him, he just dishes it off. They play good defense. They really rebound well. Worrell's a big presence in there, but I mean, evenly. One of the teams that play the most evenly across the board. He's got it terrific. Van Newell and Nathan Box played the best games I've seen them play all year. They probably were trying to step in and fill some of that void, and they played some good defense. And Van Newell got some blocks, and Nathan Box got himself on the scoreboard 3-4. He got him at 6-8 points, something like that. He also took more shots than maybe normally he does. He's not a very tall kid, but he's a tough little scrappy guy. Gets in there, and he ain't free to mix it up, is he?
Yeah, no, and you're exactly right. The scouting report on Nathan Box, most teams will kind of help off of him to go deal with Lane Rung or with Helgi. I know in the past with Rhaegar or Rung, but last year a lot of teams would help off of Box and go deal with Helgi. Last night Box took 9 shots, which I don't know if I've ever seen a box score where Nathan Box is taking 9 shots, and that's not a knock on him.
It's not his role.
Really good facilitator. Yeah, he's a great facilitator. He had 9 rebounds last night, 7 defensive. He had 6 points. He was 3-9 from the field. He only took 1 3. He's guides around the basket, but he plays hard. He plays unselfish. And when you play unselfish, sometimes you don't take a lot of shots. And so it's good to see. I think they need him to take, 7 to 9 shots a game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if he could step up in that would definitely help him a little bit. I think he had a 20-point game once last year.
Yeah, I mean, their bench did not take a single shot last night.
Well, they don't have. He's got 4 or 5 pretty good players that start, and then he got some good kids that come off the bench and give you quality minutes and spell a guy or not. But they don't have. Meepo could start their bench and still have a 20-point score in the game.
Yeah, they do a good job, and Rhaegar went 6 of 10. So I mean, gosh, for a freshman to come in there and go 6 for 10 in a game like that. He shot 50% from the 3. He didn't, none of them got to the foul line very much. They only got 9 free throws last night. And I'm sure that's something the coach is going to look at. They went 2 of 9 from the free throw line last night, which which is unlike a Holy Trinity team. They're so fundamentally sound and solid. But, again, all those seniors from Meepo, we talked about this last year with our guys. In the Holy Trinity guys last year, these seniors, especially at Meepo, have played so many conference games. They have seen so much basketball. Unfortunately, Rigger and Ellison are just going to need a couple years of experience. They'll learn, and this is great experience for them. And, they battled, played a really good team with a lot of seniors. And that's what Holy Trinity was like last year. A lot of great players, a lot of seniors, a lot of battle-tested guys. So very not surprised by that one, but again, shout out to Max Griffin and Coach Worrell and his, with those kids. That's a great honor to get 1,000 points in this league. And yeah, congrats to him and his family.
Well, I'm a little limited on time, so we're going to speed it up a little bit here. I'm going to throw out a score. I don't know too much about this game. I kind of just watched the last 2 minutes of it to kind of get an idea. But the Fairfield Trojans go play a ranked Centerville team with Malachi Rice, who I know at one point this season scored 150 points in 3 games, averaging 50 points a game there. But they get the win. Fairfield Trojans go out there and get a nice, I think it was 73 to 50.
Yeah, Centerville last night is that the one you're talking
about? Yeah, the Fairfield beat Centerville last
450. Yeah, 64-50 Fairfield.
Okay, well, they go. Fairfield's got a kid named Zillman, and he's averaging 9 points a game, but he's kind of a highlight reel. You and me have seen him dunk and just get up in the air like nobody else can. He gets 19 points in this game. I've been waiting for somehow to them to focus on getting, when I played basketball in the 70s and 80s, didn't have a 3-point line. And we just, whoever our best player was, we'd give him the ball every time. You know what I mean? We just give the ball to the big guy in the middle, and they'll just push around and shove and try to shove that ball in there. But Zillman, if they can utilize him more, he's just he's one of these electric players that you can't keep your eye off of either.
No, yeah, and Fairfield had a really good second quarter last night. The other 3 quarters, Centerville won the first 20-19, Fairfield won the third 16-14, Fairfield won the fourth 9-8. But all 3 of those quarters outside of the second was extremely close. The second quarter, Fairfield outscored Centerville 20-8. And so it was that second quarter that really helped Fairfield pull away, outscoring Centerville by 12. But that's a great win. I mean, Centerville, 6-2, Fairfield 2-6. So that's a big win for the Trojans. And yeah, that's just they need something to kind of kickstart the second half of this season and get them kind of rolling again in the Southeast Conference. So congrats to them. That's a good win.
What does that do for Fairfield's confidence? And, seem like sometimes the team's scuffing along and they just need to get a win, and they do get a win on the board here. Do you think that's going to bounce them back quite a bit?
It does. It does. It absolutely does. And, now they're going up and playing Mount Pleasant, who's another team that's young and kind of struggling. And Mount Pleasant got a good win the other night against New London on the road. So, but that's another winnable game for them. Then they travel, after that, they go to Van Buren, and that's a team that's struggled a little bit as of late. Pekin, Fort Madison, who's, is still trying to get their first win. So the schedule of the next 4 games sets up well for Fairfield.
Yeah, all of our winnable games. All
winnable games. And the stretch that they've lost, I mean, Washington, who beat Meepo, good team. Obviously, Gamecock, Jackson Clark, really good team. Hillcrest Academy,
really good, undefeated.
Yep. Burlington, who's played well. I mean, they just had a stretch of really good teams. So now they're going to start getting some competition. I think that'll be a little bit more conducive to what they're, they want to play against, and that should help them, hopefully.
All right. Well, Fairfield gets the win. Let's see here. There's another big game last night, and it was Pekin at Winfield Mount Union. The score, I saw Pekin wins this game by 5 points. Do you know anything about that game?
I don't. I haven't seen either one of those two teams live yet. So no, the only other game that I was watching was the New London Danville game. I was kind of watching on Huddle from my phone. Didn't get much out of the North.
All right. Well, I think it's like a 55-50 or 60-55 game. I'm sorry, I'm not having the exact scores, but that website I use isn't pulling up right now. But so they get to win. That's a big win for Peak, and that puts them back in the hunt there. Let me see what else was last night. I know Central Lee, like a 72-55 winish over Van Buren. I thought Van Buren plays pretty
78-56. Yeah, they went over to Van Buren. Van Buren got out early, got the lead, but Central Lee is, they're fighting for their life right now on that, trying to stay in that race and, try to keep up with Meepo for that two spot and possibly battle Notre Dame for the South title. So they needed that one last night. Van Buren, they've just really struggled as of late, and they don't have much size inside. They play a lot of 5 out, a lot of guards, but they're 2-8 on the season, and I'm sure that Coach Shulman's trying to find some ways. He does a lot of offensive stuff down there, so I'm sure he's trying to figure out a way to get more points. But Central Lee was, they were coming off that loss, Minneapolis, so they needed this one bad. That was a tough game for Van Buren coming off a Central Lee team that had lost at home to Minneapolis.
Well, I think both teams could take something away from that game. I think they both played well, but I think that 58 points is a pretty good amount for undersized Van Buren team to put up there. Let's see. There was a game I don't know the score of. I don't know if you can bird dog it for me or not, but Columbus played L&M last night.
Yeah, I'm sure I can get that one here. Columbus last night played they played L&M, and that one, well, I guess they don't have it posted yet.
Yeah, I still, that's one I couldn't find. I did talk to Jeff Mills a little bit. He was, he's taking pictures for the paper and stuff. So he's at wrestling meet and slipping over, getting some pictures of the Waco Wapello game. Wapello did have maybe even had a lead at halftime in this game and had a 10-point lead for a little while there. But all Jeff said all he heard was that Waco turned it around and does get a win by about 10 in that one.
Yeah. And it's, there's just a lot of really good, there's a lot of balance up there in that side of the bracket. And so there's going to be some upsets every night. And, obviously Hillcrest is still the team to beat up on the north side, but yeah, that was a good night up there.
Well, another game in that northern side, kind of a rivalry match as Lone Tree travels over to Highland. And Highland gets the win here. I was a little shocked because they win 10 points or better. I can't quite remember exactly what the score was, but 62-49. I'm sure Coach Cheney's Lone Tree Lions are a little disappointed there. Highland gets a win over Wapello early on the last-second shot. They get another conference win here tonight. I know those teams aren't battling for first place, but I've always kind of liked those kind of matchups that seem kind of even, but Highland plays pretty well tonight.
Yeah, Highland, Hazlett had, senior had 19 points, 8 of 21 from the three. So he shot it a lot, but 19 points, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. Rolling, who's a junior, had 16, and then Schneider, who's a junior, had 11 points. So Schneider had a good night. He had 11 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks, 1 steal. So that's some of those stats have already started to come in, but it was, obviously with another big second quarter. Highland outscored Lone Tree 17-9. So that kind of second and fourth quarter was big for Highland. And then the other 2 quarters, Lone Tree, stuck right there with them. But again, you get to those situations, Dave, where you got a sub or somebody gets in foul trouble if your bench isn't as deep. And the better teams or the deeper teams can sometimes kind of run away with it.
Okay. Let me think here. There was a couple games last night, or not Monday night. We didn't yet talked about yet. Burlington beats Fairfield. Burlington plays great in this game. I just got done talking to Coach achy, so you can listen to that if you want to catch up on that game. Mount Pleasant does get a win over New London last night. New London plays really great in the first half, but Mount Pleasant's too much for them there. You had the Danville, was it Danville New London game you were kind of paying attention to?
And New London, again, just like the Mount Pleasant game Monday night, New London gets out early, gets the lead. I think they were up a couple times, even in the second half. I think they were up 8 or 9, but Danville fought back and got up, 5. There was a weird call late, and I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but there was some technical free throw shot with under a minute to go, and it was like a 2-point game. But it looked like it was coming off a sideline out of bounds. So I'm assuming that it wasn't something that was said. It was maybe they touched the ball. But again, I was watching the West Burlington Notre Dame game live, and then I had it on my phone. So, but yeah, Danville was able to make their free throws down the stretch, come away with a win. So unfortunately, New London, they're getting.
Yeah, I think there's a win coming for New London. I really do. I think they keep playing better and better and better.
Danville's just so hard to play at home. They play a lot. Their record and how they score and everything at home seems to be a lot better this year. And sometimes with younger teams, you'll see that. But yeah, I know New London, they're sitting there at 0-9, but their last few games, I mean, they lost by 7. The Mount Pleasant score, it was a lot closer than it ended up being 23, but it was closer. But yeah, they're playing well for the first half or for 3 quarters, but they just need to find a way to hold that momentum through 4 quarters, and Brigham Porter and them, they'll get there.
Well, I'm not working off of a list here, but I think Alburnett does get the best of Mid Prairie last night. A couple tough losses recently for Mid Prairie. And hold on just a second here, Coach. Well, we got a Mid Prairie loses to Alburnett, and Sigourney. Coach Islick has a real tough English Valley team, been playing really well, but they handle them pretty easily. It was a 70-50 some score, and they get it done. Well, Coach, is there any other games that we're forgetting? And if I did forget your game, I apologize.
No, I think there's just so many going on, and obviously it was a big night last night for we talked about it in the pregame show, but yesterday, but kudos to West Burlington on a hell of a streak. Their last game they had lost was February 7th, 2022 in that home gym. So that's 1,000, I think I counted up, it's like 1,429 days they had between home losses. So spanning 3 coaching staffs, can't tell you how many different players. I mean, it was 3 years, 10 months, and 30 days. So the last time West Burlington had lost a game before last night at home, the U.S. had gotten a gold medal in the Beijing Olympics. It was their first medal. I mean, we basically went almost 4 years. So shout out to them, Ryan O'Hearn and Jonah, obviously 3 different coaching staffs, part of that, probably at least 20 different starters and probably 50 to 60 different ball players. So heck of a streak.
Well, that's the Smithburg Auto Scoreboard Show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with you Friday night.